He fought the waves to rescue his brother, but what happened next was unexpected. Tyler Johnson trembled from exhaustion as he held the wet, motionless body of his 3-year-old brother in his arms. He had just pulled him from the violent waves that nearly took him forever, but now little Ethan wasn't responding to his desperate calls. That's when an elegant woman came running across the sand, wearing expensive clothes that contrasted with the simple surroundings of Malibu Beach in California. She threw herself over the two boys with a strength Tyler didn't expect. "Ethan, my son," the woman screamed, trying to pull the child from the teenager's arms. "What did you do to my baby?" Tyler stepped back, confused and still panting from the effort of swimming against the current. "Your son?" "I don't understand, ma'am. This is my brother Ethan. He was playing in the water when the wave—" "Liar!" the woman interrupted, her green eyes blazing with anger and desperation. "You stole my son. 2 years searching for him." Beachgoers began to gather, forming a curious circle around the commotion. Tyler pressed Ethan against his chest, feeling the boy's small heartbeat slow but steady. "Ma'am, you're mistaken. Ethan has always been my brother. Our grandma Dorothy raised us until she—" "Dorothy Wilson?" the woman interrupted again, this time with a look of recognition that sent a chill down Tyler's spine. "You knew Grandma Dorothy." The elegant woman pulled an expensive bag from her hands and began rifling through the documents inside. Her hands shook as she searched for something she seemed desperate to find. "I'm Catherine Reynolds Wilson. This child is my son, Ethan Wilson, born March 15, 2022. He disappeared from the nursery in my home 2 years ago." Tyler felt the world spin around him. How could this woman know his brother's name and birth date? He had always known those details because Grandma Dorothy had repeated them so often, teaching him how to care for the boy. "This can't be right," he murmured, kissing Ethan's wet forehead. "Grandma always said our mother left us when I was 12. She never mentioned any Catherine." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Catherine pulled out a laminated photo she kept in her wallet. It showed a chubby, smiling baby with the same dark brown eyes and face shape Ethan had now. "Recognize him?" she asked, her voice breaking with emotion. Tyler looked at the photo, then at Ethan's sleeping face. The resemblance was undeniable, but it made no sense with everything he had believed for years. "Even if it's true," he said slowly, trying to process the information. "He's been my brother for 2 years. I took care of him when he had a fever. I taught him his first words. I work at Frank's Market to buy food and diapers." "Work where?" a man's voice asked behind Catherine. A tall man in a suit stepped closer to the group. He had the air of someone used to solving problems with money and authority. Tyler recognized the type immediately. He was just like the wealthy tourists who sometimes appeared on the beach and treated locals as if they were invisible. "Richard, where were you?" Catherine turned to the man. "I found our son. He's okay." Richard Wilson looked at Tyler with a mix of suspicion and irritation, as if the teenager were an inconvenient obstacle in his plans. "What's this about working at a market? How old are you, kid?" 15, Tyler answered, lifting his chin with pride despite the confusion. "And I've been working since I was 13 to support us. Grandma Dorothy got sick and someone had to—" "Dorothy Wilson was my maid," Richard cut in with a tone that made clear how he saw the people who worked for him. "She vanished from our house the same night Ethan disappeared." Tyler's stomach twisted. Grandma Dorothy had never mentioned working for rich people. She always said she took care of a house, but Tyler imagined it was for some middle-class family in the neighborhood. "Grandma never said she worked for you," he murmured, confused. "Dorothy took my son," Catherine said, her voice firmer now. "She was having money troubles, thought she could blackmail us, or—" "My grandma wasn't a criminal!" Tyler exploded, making Ethan stir in his arms. "She was the most honest woman I ever knew. Raised us with love, never lacked affection. But she lacked money, didn't she?" Richard laughed cruelly. "Just look at the state of you two. Old clothes, this boy too thin. Is this what you call good care?" Rage burned in Tyler's chest like volcano lava. All the nights he'd stayed awake when Ethan was sick, all the meals he'd skipped so his brother could eat, all the dreams he'd given up to work and support them both, all of it reduced to a failure by a man who'd probably never truly cared for his own son. "I may not have money," he said, his voice shaking with emotion, "but I know the names of all of Ethan's favorite toys. I know he's scared of thunder. I know he likes falling asleep to soft music. I know his favorite word is cookie because I taught him. Do you know any of that?" Catherine hesitated for a moment, and Tyler saw something like shame flicker in her green eyes. But Richard showed no remorse. "We know he's our son and was stolen from us," he said coldly, "and we know you have no legal right to him." Just then, Ethan began to stir in Tyler's arms. His little brown eyes opened slowly, still dazed from the near tragedy in the water. When he saw his big brother's familiar face, he gave a small, tired smile. "Ty," he said hoarsely, using the affectionate nickname he always did. "Hey, little guy." Tyler smiled back, relief flooding his body. "You scared us." Ethan looked around and noticed all the people watching. When his eyes met Catherine's, he shrank against Tyler's chest, hiding his face. "Who's the lady, Ty?" The innocent question hit Catherine like a punch to the gut. Her own son didn't recognize her. 2 tears rolled down her cheeks before she could stop them. She began, but her voice failed. "She's just a confused lady, buddy," Tyler said gently. "Don't worry." "Confused?" Richard snapped. "Enough of this charade. We're settling this at the police station. This boy is a minor and has illegal custody of a child." "Wait," a firm voice cut through the argument. An elderly woman with grey hair and simple clothes stepped toward the group. She must have been in her 70s, but she moved with determination and natural authority. Tyler recognized her immediately. It was Mrs. Margaret, who'd lived in the neighborhood for decades and knew every family story. "I knew Dorothy Wilson very well," Mrs. Margaret said, looking straight at Catherine, "and I know exactly why she took that child." The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Even the kids playing nearby seemed to have stopped to listen. "Mrs. Dorothy wasn't a thief," the old woman continued. "She was a desperate woman trying to save a child's life." "Save him from what?" Catherine asked, and there was something in her voice that suggested she might already know the answer. Mrs. Margaret looked from Richard to Catherine, then to Tyler holding Ethan. "From your own family," she said simply. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, continuing." Richard's face turned pale for a moment before he regained his composure. "What nonsense is this?" He tried to laugh, but the sound came out strained. "A maid making up stories to justify theft?" "Dorothy told me everything before she died," Mrs. Margaret said calmly. "She overheard conversations in your home, saw things a mother should see. That's why she took the boy and ran." "What conversations?" Catherine asked, and Tyler noticed she seemed genuinely confused. "About how much easier it would be if the baby simply disappeared," Mrs. Margaret replied, keeping her eyes fixed on Richard. "How it would solve so many financial and family problems." The businessman took a threatening step toward the elderly woman. "You have no proof of this, just the ramblings of an old—" "I do," Mrs. Margaret interrupted, pulling a yellowed envelope from her bag. "Dorothy gave me this before she left, told me to keep it in case it was ever needed." Tyler felt Ethan cling tighter to his shirt. The boy might not understand the words, but he sensed the tension in the air. "What is that?" Catherine reached for the envelope. "Letters," Mrs. Margaret explained. "Letters your sister-in-law wrote to people you'd never guess she knew, planning how to make a child vanish without raising suspicion." Richard tried to grab the envelope, but several men who had been watching the scene moved to shield Mrs. Margaret. In the local community, she was respected as a matriarch, and no one would let a wealthy outsider mistreat her. "Jennifer," Catherine murmured, as if piecing together a terrible puzzle. "My sister-in-law Jennifer was involved." "Your sister-in-law wanted her son to inherit everything," Mrs. Margaret confirmed, "and she saw Ethan as an obstacle to her plans." Tyler held Ethan tighter, beginning to grasp the complexity of the situation they were in. This wasn't just about a lost and found child. There was a much darker family scheme behind it all. Dorothy overheard Jennifer on the phone arranging meetings with dangerous people, Mrs. Margaret continued. People who make children disappear forever. She couldn't let that happen. That's a lie, Richard shouted, but his voice sounded strange, like he was trying to convince himself. Did you know, Richard? Catherine turned to her husband, and for the first time, Tyler saw real anger in her green eyes. Did you know what your sister was planning? Richard's silence was more telling than any confession. Catherine staggered back as if struck. My God, she whispered, both of you. You let me believe my son had been kidnapped for money. You made me suffer for 2 years, hire investigators, cry every night. Catherine, you don't understand, Richard tried to explain. The company was bankrupt. The creditors were going to take everything if Ethan inherited his share. Shut up, she screamed. Shut up right now. Ethan began to cry, frightened by the shouting. Tyler immediately started rocking him gently, humming softly a song Grandma Dorothy had taught him, a simple tune about little birds and flowers that always calmed the boy. Shh, little one, he whispered. Ty's here. Everything's gonna be okay. Catherine stopped yelling and watched the scene. There was something in the tender way Tyler cared for Ethan that made her question everything she was about to do. Dorothy saved my son, she said, more to herself than anyone else. And this boy here raised him with love that you never gave, added Mrs. Margaret, pointing at Tyler. Working since he was a child, sacrificing everything so his brother wouldn't go without. But Ethan is my biological son, Catherine said, now without her earlier aggression. I have rights. Rights don't create love, interrupted a new voice. Everyone turned to see a middle-aged woman approaching. She wore a nurse's uniform and carried a medical bag. Sorry, I heard the commotion from the road, the nurse said. I'm Susan. I work at the health clinic nearby. Can I check on the boy who nearly drowned? Tyler hesitated for a moment, but allowed Susan to examine Ethan. She checked his breathing, his heartbeat, and asked him to follow a small flashlight with his eyes. He's okay, she confirmed after a few minutes, but he needs to be monitored for a few hours. Near-drowning cases can have delayed complications. I'll take care of him, Tyler said immediately. We'll take care of him, Catherine corrected. I'm his mother. Susan looked between them, clearly sensing the tension. Are you family? She asked. It's complicated, Tyler answered honestly. Well, whatever the legal situation, what matters now is the child's well-being, Susan said with professional authority. And from what I've seen, he feels safe with the young man here. It was true. Ethan had stopped crying and was now playing with the buttons on Tyler's shirt, completely calm in his older brother's arms. He doesn't even recognize me, Catherine murmured, her voice heavy with genuine sadness. Because you weren't there, Mrs. Margaret said without cruelty, just stating a fact. This boy knows the hands that fed him, the voice that sang him to sleep, the arms that comforted him when he was sick. Tyler looked at Catherine and for the first time didn't see an enemy trying to take his brother away. He saw a mother who had lost 2 precious years of her son's life because of other people's greed and cruelty. Mrs. Catherine, he said softly, do you want to get to know Ethan? Really, I mean. Not to take him away, but to see who he is now. Catherine looked at him in surprise. She hadn't expected generosity from the teenager she had accused of theft just minutes before. You'd let me? Ethan is a happy kid, Tyler said, adjusting the boy in his arms. He likes new people when he's not scared. If you promise not to frighten him. I promise, Catherine said quickly. Richard tried to interfere. Catherine, we don't need some kid's permission to... You don't, she cut him off coldly. You leave. Now. What do you mean, leave? I'm your husband. You're an accomplice to the people who tried to make my son disappear, Catherine said, her voice filled with a determination Tyler had never heard before. Get out of my sight before I call someone to remove you. The men from the community who had been watching stepped a little closer, making it clear they were ready to back Catherine's request. Richard looked around, realized he was outnumbered and out of his territory, and backed down. This isn't over, Catherine, he threatened before leaving. You'll still need me. Never again, she replied without even looking back. When Richard was finally out of sight, the tension in the air eased considerably. Ethan, who had stayed quiet during the argument, began making little baby sounds again and moving his tiny hands. Can I come closer?" Catherine asked hesitantly. Tyler took a step toward her, letting her approach Ethan. The child looked at the woman with natural curiosity, no longer afraid now that the shouting had stopped. "Hi, Ethan," Catherine said softly. "You're such a brave little boy." Ethan smiled, that open, confident smile that always melted anyone's heart. Catherine began to cry silently, covering her mouth with her hand. "He's beautiful," she whispered. "He's grown so much." "Would you like to hold him?" Tyler offered, surprising even himself with the suggestion. Catherine looked at him as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You'd let me?" "If he wants to go," Tyler said. "Ethan's always been friendly, but if he doesn't feel comfortable—" "I understand," Catherine said quickly. Tyler stepped closer and carefully began to pass Ethan into Catherine's arms. The little boy hesitated for a moment, glancing between the two adults, but when Tyler smiled and nodded reassuringly, Ethan let himself be held by his birth mother. "He's heavy," Catherine laughed through her tears. "The last time I held him, he was so tiny." Ethan stayed still for a few seconds, studying Catherine's face with the intense curiosity little children have. Then, to everyone's surprise, he reached out a chubby little hand and touched the pearl necklace she was wearing. "Pretty," he said clearly, one of the words Tyler had taught him while showing him colorful drawings. "Thank you," Catherine smiled, a genuine, warm smile. Mrs. Margaret approached Tyler as they watched the interaction. "You're a very mature young man," she said softly. "Dorothy would be proud." "Mrs. Margaret," Tyler asked, "do you think Grandma really did the right thing? Taking Ethan?" The elderly woman looked at Ethan in Catherine's arms, then toward the spot where Richard had disappeared. "Dorothy saved that child's life," she said firmly. "And you saved his soul. Between people who meant harm and a mother who didn't even know the danger, she chose love. She was always a wise woman. But now? What happens now?" Before Mrs. Margaret could answer, Catherine walked over to them, still holding Ethan. "Tyler," she said, "I need to talk to you. About Ethan's future. And about you too." "About me?" "You sacrificed your childhood to take care of my son," Catherine said sincerely. "That's not something I can ignore or pretend didn't happen. You're the only family Ethan knows." Tyler felt a tightness in his chest. He had been prepared for a fight, not for understanding and acknowledgement. "I just did what any brother would do," he murmured. "No," Catherine shook her head. "Any brother wouldn't have dropped out of school to work. Any brother wouldn't have gone hungry so the little one could eat. You did far more than your duty." Ethan began to squirm in Catherine's arms, making little protesting noises. She looked at Tyler uncertainly. "I think he wants to go back to you. He's hungry," Tyler explained, taking Ethan back. "He always gets like this around this time. I have some fruit in my bag." "Bag?" Tyler pointed to a worn, faded backpack lying in the sand near where it had all started. "I always bring food when I take him to the beach, and water, sunscreen, extra diapers." Catherine watched as Tyler opened the backpack and revealed a complete, if improvised, childcare kit. There were bananas, cookies, a water bottle, wet wipes, and even a small portable umbrella. "You planned for everything," she said with admiration. "Always do," Tyler replied, peeling a banana for Ethan. "When you don't have much money, you have to be extra organized." Ethan eagerly took the fruit and began eating, smearing his hands and face like any 3-year-old would. Tyler automatically grabbed a wipe and started cleaning him with practiced, gentle motions. "How old were you when you started taking care of him alone?" Catherine asked. 13, Tyler answered. "Grandma got very sick that last year. Pneumonia, heart problems. She tried to help, but I could see she was suffering. It was better if I did things myself." "What about school?" "I studied at night when I could," Tyler said without self-pity. "I missed a lot, but I still know how to read and write well. Grandma Dorothy always said education was important." Catherine stayed silent for a moment, processing everything she was hearing. When she spoke again, Her voice was heavy with emotion. "Tyler, I want to propose something. But first I need you to know that no matter your answer, I'll make sure you both have everything you need. A home, food, school for you. Everything." "Why?" Tyler asked suspiciously. In his experience, rich people didn't do favors without wanting something in return. "Because it's the least I can do," Catherine said simply. "You took care of my son when I didn't even know he was in danger. You protected him, fed him, loved him. I owe you more than I can ever repay." "You don't owe me anything," Tyler said firmly. "I love Ethan. I didn't take care of him expecting a reward." "I know," Catherine smiled. "And that's exactly why I want to make this offer. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. What offer? Catherine took a deep breath, as if preparing for something very important. "I want you to legally become Ethan's brother," she said. "I want to adopt you too. That way you two can stay together, but with a stable family, and the resources to grow up well." Tyler almost dropped Ethan in surprise. "Adopt? Me? You're a minor with no family," Catherine explained. "Legally, you need a guardian, and honestly, after seeing how you care for Ethan, I can't imagine separating you two." "But you don't even know me," Tyler protested. "What if I'm a bad influence? What if—" "Tyler," Catherine gently interrupted him, "you literally jumped into the ocean to save my son. You gave up your teenage years to raise him. You were willing to share the only family you know with me, a stranger who came in shouting accusations. If that's not character, I don't know what is." Ethan, oblivious to the conversation that would shape his future, finished his banana and reached his little arms out to Catherine again. This time she took him with more confidence, and he snuggled against her naturally. "Lady," Ethan suddenly said, making everyone laugh. "Yes, little one?" "Pretty lady," he declared with the innocent honesty of children. Catherine melted completely. It was the first time in 2 years her son had spoken directly to her, and he'd called her pretty. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said, kissing his forehead. Tyler watched the interaction with mixed feelings. Part of him was happy seeing Ethan connect with his birth mother. Another part was afraid of being left behind, now that Catherine had found her son. "Tyler," Mrs. Margaret approached him again. "Can I speak with you privately for a moment?" They stepped aside while Catherine continued talking to Ethan. "Young man," the elderly woman said, "I know you're confused and scared. It's natural. Mrs. Margaret, what if she changes her mind? What if she decides she doesn't want to adopt me after getting to know me better? I have nowhere to go." "Look at her," Mrs. Margaret pointed to Catherine, who was showing Ethan the waves and explaining how they formed. "That woman lost 2 years of her son's life. She's desperate to make up for lost time. Do you really think she'd risk losing Ethan again by pushing away the only person he considers family?" Tyler considered her words. It made sense, but there was still a bigger worry. What if I can't adjust? I've always been independent. I've always made my own decisions. What's it going to be like having a... Mom? "Dorothy raised you until you were 13, Mrs. Margaret reminded. "You know what it's like to have a mother figure. And from what I've seen of Catherine, she's not the type who will try to control you. She respects you too much for that." "How can you be so sure?" "Because she gave you a choice," the woman replied wisely. "Controlling women don't give choices. They impose decisions." At that moment, Susan, the nurse, approached them. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, "but I need to take Ethan to the health clinic. It's protocol after a near drowning, even when the child seems fine." Tyler immediately turned to Catherine. "I'll go with you," he said. "Of course," Catherine agreed without hesitation. "You know his medical history better than anyone." On the way to the clinic, which was just a few blocks from the beach, Tyler told Catherine about all the childhood illnesses Ethan had, the vaccines he'd received, even the food preferences and allergies he'd discovered through trial and error. "He's allergic to shrimp," he said as they walked. "Found out the hard way when he turned 2. He broke out in red, itchy hives." "Seafood allergy," Catherine noted mentally. "I have that too. Must be genetic. And he loves music, Tyler continued. Any kind. When he had colic as a baby, I'd sing to stop his crying. Now he asks for music before bed. What kind of songs do you sing? A little of everything, Tyler shrugged. Grandma Dorothy knew a lot of old songs, country music, folk songs, even some in English she learned who knows where. You have a nice voice, Catherine remarked. I noticed when you were calming Ethan at the beach. Grandma always said that. Tyler smiled sadly. Wanted me to join the church choir, but I never had time. And now, if you had time, would you like to sing more? Tyler stopped walking and looked at her curiously. Why are you asking? Because I want to know you, Catherine said honestly. If we're going to be a family, I need to know your dreams, your wishes, not just your responsibilities. It was a question no one had asked Tyler in years. Since taking care of Ethan, his own desires had taken a back seat. He began hesitantly, always wanted to learn guitar, maybe even study music properly. But they're silly dreams. They're not silly, Catherine said firmly. They're important and doable. They arrived at the clinic where Susan explained the situation to the on-duty doctor. Ethan was examined more thoroughly, and to everyone's relief, he was perfectly fine. You acted fast with the rescue, the doctor praised Tyler. A few more minutes in the water and it could have been much worse. I learned to swim right here at the beach, Tyler explained. Always knew I might need it someday. You thought about emergencies as a kid? The doctor asked, impressed. When you're responsible for someone else, you think of everything, Tyler replied matter-of-factly. The doctor and Susan exchanged meaningful glances. It was rare to see a teenager with such maturity and sense of responsibility. After the checkup, they returned to the beach to gather Tyler's things. Ethan had fallen asleep in Catherine's arms on the way, exhausted by the day's events. Where do you live? Catherine asked as Tyler packed his belongings into his backpack. Over there, Tyler pointed to a cluster of modest houses a few streets from the beach. It's small, but it's ours. Can I see it? Tyler hesitated. The house he'd shared with Grandma Dorothy and Ethan was humble, with old furniture and patches everywhere. Not the kind of place someone like Catherine usually visited. It's not very fancy, he said. Tyler, Catherine touched his arm gently. I'm not judging your home. I'm trying to understand how you've lived. It's important to me. The house stood on a dirt road, lined with small but well-kept homes. The one Tyler called home had a tiny porch with plants in old cans, repurposed as pots. Grandma Dorothy loved plants, he explained, noticing Catherine observing the makeshift decor. She said they made the house happier. Inside, the house was even more modest than it appeared from the outside. There was a small living room with an old couch, an outdated television, a minimal kitchen, and 2 tiny bedrooms. But everything was impeccably clean and organized. Where does Ethan sleep? Catherine asked. With me, Tyler pointed to one of the bedrooms. We only have one bed, but he's small. And this way I can hear if he has nightmares or gets sick during the night. The room they shared had a single bed with patched but clean sheets, some simple toys neatly arranged in a cardboard box decorated with children's drawings, and folded clothes in a dresser that had seen better days. Did you draw this? Catherine pointed to the toy box. Ethan did, Tyler smiled proudly. He's learning to use crayons. Grandma always said kids need to express themselves. On the wall, photos were taped up, simple snapshots. Tyler and Ethan at the beach, the 2 eating ice cream, Ethan taking his first steps, everyday moments captured with an old cell phone. You documented everything, Catherine murmured, examining the pictures. Grandma said memories matter, Tyler explained, that one day Ethan would want to remember how small he was. Catherine paused at one particular photo. Tyler, clearly younger and thinner, holding baby Ethan in his arms. Both were smiling, and the love in the image was so palpable it was impossible not to be moved. How old were you here? 13, Tyler replied. It was right after Grandma got really sick. Ethan was about 6 months old. You were practically a child taking care of a baby. It was what needed to be done, Tyler said simply. Catherine continued exploring the house, noticing details that told the story of the last 2 years. A notebook where Tyler meticulously recorded monthly expenses, every penny accounted for. A calendar on the kitchen wall with reminders about Ethan's vaccines, doctor's appointments, paydays. A small makeshift shelf with children's books, clearly bought second-hand, but in good condition. "Did you read to him?" she asked, flipping through one of the books. "Every night," Tyler confirmed. "Grandma always said kids who hear stories grow up smarter." In the room that had been Grandma Dorothy's, there was a neatly made bed and some personal belongings still carefully arranged. Tyler had preserved everything exactly as she'd left it. "You haven't touched her things," Catherine observed. "I can't," Tyler admitted. "It still feels like she might walk back in any moment." Catherine found a framed photo on the nightstand, a picture of Dorothy with the two boys, likely taken a few months before she passed. The woman's face was thin from illness, but she smiled with genuine joy. "She loved you both so much," Catherine said softly. "And we loved her," Tyler replied, his voice thick. When they finished touring the house, Ethan had woken up and was asking for water. Tyler automatically went to the kitchen and prepared a bottle with filtered water, testing the temperature on his wrist before giving it to the boy. "I always do it this way," he explained, noticing Catherine watching. "Grandma taught me drinks for kids have to be just the right temperature." "Tyler," Catherine said after Ethan finished drinking, "I need to ask you something important. Do you trust me?" The question caught Tyler off guard. He looked at Catherine, then at Ethan playing on the living room floor, then back at her. "I'm trying," he answered honestly. "That's a fair answer," Catherine smiled. "I'm also trying to process all of this. Finding my son, learning about my husband, meeting you. It's a lot for one day." "What happens now?" Tyler asked the question that haunted him. "Now we take it slow," Catherine said thoughtfully. "First, I'll handle the situation with Richard. I need to understand how involved he was in all this. And then? Then, if you want, we can start building a real family. Not one where someone replaces someone else, but one where everyone has their place." Ethan, as if sensing he was being discussed, dropped his toy and crawled over to Tyler, reaching out his little arms to be held. "Ty," he said clearly. "Hey, little one." Tyler picked him up. "Feeling better?" Ethan nodded and then looked at Catherine. "Lady stay?" he asked with the simplicity of children. "You want me to stay?" Catherine asked back. Ethan thought for a moment, glanced at Tyler as if asking permission, and then nodded. "Stay," he decided. "Then I'll stay." Catherine smiled, and for the first time since arriving at the beach, she seemed genuinely at peace. The three of them sat in silence for a while, each processing the emotions of the day. Ethan played quietly in Tyler's lap. Catherine watched the brothers interact, and Tyler tried to imagine what his life would be like from then on. "Can I ask a question?" Tyler finally said. "Of course." How does someone like you end up married to someone like Richard?" Catherine sighed, as if the question touched old wounds. "I wasn't always wealthy," she said. "My family had money, but I rebelled when I was young. I married Richard when he was still different, or at least I thought he was. The money we have came from an inheritance I received after my father passed. And then he changed. Or I started seeing who he really was," Catherine reflected. "When you have a lot of money, people show their true colors. Some get better, others plan to make children disappear." "Are you going to divorce him?" "I should have done it a long time ago," Catherine admitted. "We stayed together for appearances, for convenience, not for love. Never again for love." Ethan began to grow sleepy again. It was almost time for his afternoon nap, and Tyler automatically started humming softly, gently rocking the boy. "Does he always sleep at this time?" Catherine asked. "Always," Tyler confirmed. "Routine is important for little kids. Grandma taught me that." "Dorothy taught you a lot." "She taught me everything," Tyler said fondly. "How to take care of the house, how to cook, how to handle money, how to be responsible. But most of all, she taught me that family isn't just blood. It's who cares, who loves, who's there." That's a lesson I'm still learning, Catherine admitted. Ethan fell completely asleep, and Tyler carried him to the bedroom, carefully laying him down and covering him with a little crochet blanket Grandma Dorothy had made. 2 hours, he said as he left the room. He always naps for 2 hours in the afternoon. That's when I do chores or study. You still study? When I can, Tyler pointed to a stack of books on the living room table. Borrowed them from the library. I'm trying to finish high school on my own. Catherine examined the books. They were volumes of math, English, history, and science, all well worn with notes in the margins. You're self-taught, she observed, impressed. Didn't have a choice, Tyler shrugged. But I like learning. Grandma always said education is something no one can take from you. Tyler, Catherine said suddenly, can I tell you something? About Ethan as a baby? Sure. I really wanted to breastfeed him, she said softly. I dreamed about it during my pregnancy, but when he was born, I had medical complications. I had to stay hospitalized for weeks. When I finally got to go home, Richard had already hired a nanny and said it was better this way, that I needed to rest. Tyler listened in silence, sensing she needed to share that pain. I never got to do the things you did, Catherine continued. I never woke up in the middle of the night to give him a bottle, never changed a diaper, never saw his first steps or heard his first words. Richard said the nanny would handle everything, that I didn't need to worry. But you wanted to worry, Tyler said, understanding. Desperately, Catherine confirmed. But every time I tried, someone told me I was doing it wrong, that I didn't know how to care for a child, that it was better left to the professionals. That's why you didn't fight me today, Tyler realized. When you saw I knew how to take care of Ethan. Exactly, Catherine smiled sadly. You were doing everything I always wanted to do, and doing it well. You can still learn, Tyler offered gently. Ethan's an easy child, and I can teach you. I mean, if you want. You teach me. Catherine seemed genuinely surprised. Of course, Tyler said as if it were obvious. It's important for Ethan to know his mother, and you seem different now, better than when you showed up yelling. Catherine laughed for the first time since she'd arrived. I was panicking, she admitted. 2 years searching for him, and suddenly there he was. My instinct was to protect first and ask questions later. That was a mother's instinct, Tyler said wisely. Even after all this time, you still felt he was your son. And you? Weren't you jealous when I showed up? Tyler considered the question carefully. I was scared, he finally said. Scared of losing Ethan. He's all I have. But jealous? I don't think that's the right word. You're his mother. I always knew this day might come. What do you mean you always knew? Grandma Dorothy told me the truth in the end, Tyler revealed. When she was very sick, she called me and explained everything. Said Ethan had a wealthy family who didn't know how to protect him, and that one day they might come looking. What else did she say? That if it happened, I should judge by actions, not words, Tyler recalled. She said good people exist in every social class and so do bad ones. Dorothy was a wise woman. She was, Tyler agreed. That's why I trust what she did. If she thought Ethan was worth saving, then she was right. Just then, Catherine's phone rang. She looked at the screen and her face tightened. It's Jennifer, she said, my sister-in-law. The one who, Tyler began. The one who planned everything, yes, Catherine confirmed. I need to answer. I need to hear what she has to say now that I know the truth. Do you want me to leave? No, Catherine said firmly. You have the right to hear this. It's about Ethan. She answered on speakerphone. Jennifer. Catherine. Thank God. The voice on the other end sounded relieved and worried. Richard told me you found Ethan. Where has he been all this time? Who was with him? You know exactly where he was, Catherine said coldly. There was silence on the other end. What do you mean? I don't understand. Jennifer, I know what you did, Catherine continued. I know about the plans, the letters, everything. Catherine, I think you're confused. Jennifer tried to keep her voice calm. I know you must be emotional after finding Ethan, but confused, Catherine nearly shouted. You planned to make my son disappear. You wanted him dead so your son could inherit everything. That's absurd. Jennifer finally lost her composure. Who's putting these ideas in your head? That boy who was with Ethan? He's trying to manipulate you. Tyler shrank back involuntarily. Even knowing he'd done nothing wrong, the accusation still stung. Tyler didn't manipulate me, Catherine said firmly. He didn't even know who I was until today. But you knew exactly what you were doing. Prove it, Jennifer challenged. Prove I did anything. I have the letters you wrote, Catherine lied, though it was a strategic lie. I have documentation of everything. The silence that followed was long and telling. Jennifer, Catherine pressed, you can't have... Her sister-in-law's voice came out small. Dorothy kept everything before running away with Ethan, Catherine continued the lie. Every detail of your plan is documented. Dorothy was dead, Jennifer exploded, revealing more than she intended. How could she... Catherine and Tyler exchanged glances. Jennifer had just confessed to knowing about Grandma Dorothy's death, something an innocent person wouldn't know. How do you know Dorothy died? Catherine asked calmly. I heard Richard mention that... Richard was in contact with you about Ethan, Catherine concluded. You two were planning this together. Catherine, you have to understand. Jennifer shifted tactics, trying to sound reasonable. The company was bankrupt. If Ethan inherited his share, there'd be nothing left for us. For my son, it was about family survival. Survival? Catherine laughed bitterly. Jennifer, you own 3 houses and 2 imported cars. What survival is that? But with Ethan's inheritance divided among the cousins, you wanted a child to disappear out of greed, Catherine cut in. Don't justify it as necessity. Tyler listened silently, processing the confirmation that his adoptive family had truly saved Ethan from something terrible. What are you going to do now? Jennifer asked, real fear in her voice. First, I'm divorcing Richard, Catherine said. Then I'll make sure you both face the consequences of what you did. Catherine, think carefully. Jennifer tried one last play. If you expose this publicly, the scandal will affect Ethan too. He'll grow up knowing his own family wanted to hurt him. Ethan will grow up knowing some people love him enough to protect him, Catherine replied. No matter the cost. And Tyler, Jennifer asked slyly. You really think you can raise 2 boys? A troubled, poor teenager and a traumatized child? Tyler felt his blood boil, but Catherine answered before he could speak. Tyler isn't troubled, she said firmly. He's the most responsible, brave young man I've ever met. And Ethan isn't traumatized. He was raised with so much love, he's a happy, confident child. You barely know that boy. I know enough, Catherine cut in. I know he saved my son twice, once from your wicked plans and again from the waves today. I know he gave up his own childhood to care for Ethan. I know he has more character at 15 than you and Richard combined. Jennifer hung up without saying goodbye. Catherine stared at the phone for a few seconds before putting it away. I'm sorry you had to hear that, she told Tyler. I'm not, Tyler said honestly. Now I know Grandma Dorothy really did the right thing, and I know you're doing it too. What do you mean? You defended me, Tyler said simply. Even after knowing me just a few hours, you defended me against someone in your own family. Catherine looked at him tenderly. Tyler, you saved what's most precious in my life. I'll defend you whenever necessary. Just then, they heard soft crying coming from the bedroom. Ethan had woken up from his nap and was calling for Tyler, as he always did. Ty, his little voice echoed through the small house. I'll get him. Tyler stood up. Can I come too? Catherine asked hesitantly. Of course. They entered the bedroom together. Ethan was sitting on the bed, his hair tousled from sleep, clutching a small faded teddy bear. Hi, little one, Tyler said affectionately. Did you sleep well? Ethan nodded and then noticed Catherine. Lady came back, he observed. Yes, I did, Catherine smiled. Can I stay here with you? Ethan pondered the question with the seriousness small children sometimes show. Lady likes Ty? He asked. I like Ty very much, Catherine answered honestly. Then you can stay, Ethan decided, as if it were that simple. And maybe it really was that simple. Maybe love didn't need to be complicated by legal matters, social differences, or past traumas. Maybe it was enough to care and be present. And Ethan, Tyler said, sitting on the bed beside the boy, do you remember the pretty lady who was here earlier? I remember, Ethan nodded. She's a very special person, Tyler continued carefully. She's your mommy. Ethan looked at Catherine with renewed curiosity. Mommy, he repeated, testing the word. That's right, Catherine said softly, kneeling by the bed to meet his eye level. I'm your mommy, but you don't have to call me that if you don't want to. You can call me whatever feels comfortable. Ethan considered this with the seriousness of a 3-year-old making an important decision. Lady Mommy, he suggested. Lady Mommy is perfect. Catherine smiled through her tears. And Ty is still my brother? Always, Tyler assured. Nothing will change that. Good. Ethan seemed satisfied with the solution. Now I have Lady Mommy and Brother Ty. That's right, Catherine agreed. Now you have a big family. Ethan brightened at the idea and began counting on his tiny fingers. Me, Ty, Lady Mommy. He paused and looked around. Where's Grandma Dorothy? Tyler and Catherine exchanged glances. It was a question they knew would come, but it still stung. Remember how I told you Grandma became a star in the sky? Tyler said gently. Oh, Ethan nodded with childlike understanding. Star Grandma watches over us from up there. Exactly, Tyler agreed. And she's very happy seeing our family grow. Can I tell you both something? Catherine suddenly said. Of course, Tyler replied. I'll do everything in my power to deserve being part of this family. I know I can't erase the 2 years I lost, but I want to build a future where we're all happy. You already deserve it, Tyler said sincerely. For coming to find Ethan, for listening to me, for not trying to separate us. And for being pretty, Ethan added, making both adults laugh. Thank you, sweetheart. Catherine kissed his forehead. The rest of the afternoon passed peacefully. Catherine helped Tyler prepare dinner, learning about Ethan's food preferences and observing the carefully established routine that governed the brothers' lives. Does he always eat like this? She asked, watching Ethan chew slowly and methodically. Grandma taught me that little kids need to chew well so they don't choke, Tyler explained. And I let him eat at his own pace, no rush. Makes sense. Catherine watched how Tyler interacted with Ethan during the meal. There was a natural patience that came from 2 years of caring for the child alone. After dinner, it was bath time. Tyler showed Catherine all the products he used, explaining which soap was best for Ethan's sensitive skin, how to check the water temperature, and which bath toys were his favorites. Want to try bathing him? He offered. Can I? Catherine seemed nervous and excited at the same time. Ethan, Tyler addressed the boy. Young Mommy wants to help you take a bath, is that okay? Ethan considered the proposal while playing with a rubber duck. Does she know how to make bubbles? He asked pragmatically. We'll teach her, Tyler smiled. The bath was a success. Catherine followed all of Tyler's instructions and soon was laughing along with Ethan as they made bubbles with the soap. It was the first time in 3 years that she had bathed her own son, and the emotion was almost overwhelming. Young Mommy makes good bubbles, Ethan approved. Thank you, sweetheart, Catherine said, wiping tears of joy with the back of her hand. After the bath came bedtime stories. Tyler showed Ethan's favorite books and let Catherine choose which one to read. This one? She picked a book about a little fish who made friends in the ocean. Seems fitting after the day we've had. Ethan snuggled between Tyler and Catherine on the bed, listening intently as she read. Every now and then he'd make comments or point at the pictures, and Catherine responded with the patience of someone rediscovering the magic of being a mother. Now music, Ethan announced when the story ended. Oh yes, the lullaby, Catherine remembered. Tyler, can you sing? We can sing together, Tyler suggested. Ethan likes harmonized voices. They sang a simple version of Rockabye Baby, with Tyler carrying the melody and Catherine improvising a second voice. Ethan closed his eyes and smiled, completely relaxed between the two people who loved him most in the world. When Ethan finally fell asleep, Tyler and Catherine tiptoed out of the room. "He's an angel," Catherine whispered. "He really is," Tyler agreed proudly. "He's always been an easy child. I think Grandma Dorothy set a good foundation." They sat in the small living room, processing everything that had happened since morning. "Tyler," Catherine said after a few moments of silence, "I need to ask you something difficult." "Go ahead. Do you feel angry at me? For not being present? For leaving Ethan in danger without knowing?" Tyler thought carefully about the question. "At first I did," he admitted. "When you showed up yelling, I was angry. I thought, how can this woman come here and want to take my brother without knowing anything about him? And now? Now I see you're a victim of the same cruelty that wanted to hurt Ethan," Tyler replied. "You didn't know he was in danger. You didn't know he was protected. You only knew your son had disappeared. You're very mature for 15. I had to grow up fast." Tyler shrugged. "But I don't regret it. I'd rather have spent these 2 years taking care of Ethan than anything else." "And the future?" Catherine asked. "What do you want for your life?" It was a question Tyler had stopped asking himself long ago. "I want Ethan to be happy," he said automatically. "That's what you want for him," Catherine gently corrected. "What do you want for you?" Tyler was silent for a long moment. His own desires had been in the background for so long that it was hard to identify them. "I want to study," he finally said. "I want to finish high school, maybe go to college. I want to learn real music. And I want to be someone Ethan can be proud to call his brother." "He already is proud," Catherine assured. "Anyone who saw you two together would know that." "And you? What do you want for the future?" "I want to make up for lost time with Ethan," Catherine said without hesitation. "I want to learn to be the mother he deserves, and I want to help you achieve your dreams because that's also part of taking good care of Ethan." "How so?" "Ethan loves you," Catherine explained. "Your happiness is important to his happiness. If you're fulfilled and growing, he'll grow up seeing that it's possible to achieve goals through dedication." "Do you really want to adopt me?" Tyler asked, still unable to fully believe it. "I really do," Catherine confirmed, "but I want to do it the right way, not because you need a legal guardian, but because I genuinely want you as my son." "How does this work?" "First, we'll talk to a social worker," Catherine explained. "They'll want to evaluate if we're compatible as a family, if you feel safe with me, if I can provide what you both need. And if they think we're not compatible, then we'll work on whatever issues come up until we are," Catherine said firmly. "I won't give up on having both of you in my life, Tyler, not after seeing the love between you two." Just then, Catherine's phone rang again. This time, it was a number she didn't recognize. "Hello? Mrs. Catherine, this is attorney Michael Peterson. I was contacted by your sister-in-law, Jennifer, about an urgent matter." Catherine put the call on speaker so Tyler could listen. "What matter?" "She's concerned about the accusations you're making. She'd like to resolve this amicably, without involving authorities." "Resolve how?" Catherine asked skeptically. "She's willing to offer financial compensation for the trouble caused, a substantial sum to ensure the matter stays private." "She's trying to buy me off," Catherine translated. "She wants to avoid a scandal that would harm the entire family," the attorney corrected diplomatically. "Tell Jennifer I'm not interested in money," Catherine said coldly. "I'm interested in justice." "Ma'am, perhaps you should consider the benefits for your children." "My children?" Catherine interrupted. "How do you know about my children?" "Jennifer mentioned the child is being cared for by a minor under poor conditions." Tyler felt anger rise in his chest. Even while trying to settle things amicably, Jennifer was still attacking his ability to care for Ethan. "The conditions are not poor," Catherine said firmly. "My son was being cared for with love and dedication by someone who sacrificed everything for him, and now they're both under my protection." "I understand," the attorney shifted tone, "but you must consider that exposing this publicly could negatively affect the children in the future." "You know what negatively affects children," Catherine said angrily. "Families who plan to make them disappear for money." "Ma'am, This conversation is over. Catherine hung up. They're scared, Tyler observed. They are, Catherine agreed, and they should be. What they did is unforgivable. What's going to happen to them? I'll speak with my own attorney tomorrow, Catherine said. We'll see what legal options we have. But what if this really hurts Ethan in some way? Catherine looked at Tyler with admiration. Even after everything they'd uncovered, his first concern was still Ethan's well-being. Tyler, Ethan needs to grow up knowing there are people who fight for him, she said. We can't let Jennifer and Richard think they can do terrible things and walk away unscathed. You're right, Tyler agreed after a moment. Grandma Dorothy always said doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always necessary. They stayed up late talking, planning their next steps and getting to know each other better. Catherine shared about her privileged but lonely childhood, how lost she'd felt when Ethan disappeared. Tyler talked about the simple but happy life he'd had with Grandma Dorothy, the challenges of raising Ethan alone, and the small moments of joy that made it all worthwhile. You know what amazes me most about you, Catherine said when it was past midnight. What? You don't hold any bitterness, she observed. You spent 2 years making huge sacrifices, faced hardships that even adults would struggle with, and yet you're not resentful toward life. Grandma Dorothy taught me that bitterness only hurts the one who feels it, Tyler explained, and I always had Ethan to remind me there's still good in the world. Dorothy raised an exceptional young man. She always said she didn't raise me, Tyler smiled, that she just planted the seed and let it grow naturally. She really was a wise woman. She was, Tyler agreed, and I think she would have liked you. Why? Because you came looking for Ethan, even when you didn't know if you'd find him. Because you protected him from people who meant harm, and because you treat others with respect, even when they're different from you. Catherine was moved by his words. Thank you, Tyler. That means a lot, coming from you. It's the truth, he said simply. End of story. Now tell me, what did you think of this story of family love and overcoming hardships? Do you believe Catherine, Tyler, and Ethan managed to form a true family? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you made it this far, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this one.